Hello and welcome to today's webinar, all about total compensation statements and helping your employees really understand the true and full value of everything you as an organization offer. I do want to point out quickly that under the attachment and link section, you will find a handout copy of the presentation. So for those people who like to have it in front of them and make notes and follow along, you are welcome to jump over there right now and download that. Make a quick copy if you want as we begin and get started. So I also want to let you know that today's webinar is approved for both HRCI and SHRM recertification credit. So if we have any PHRs, SPHRs, or SHRM certified professionals on the call, at the end of the program, you can just send me an email. For those of you who may be watching this recorded, shoot me an email. I'm able to see that, in fact, you did watch the whole thing, and I will quickly send you your certification. So let's jump in now. So what is a total compensation statement? A total compensation statement is a document that you provide, essentially a communication tool that you are providing your employees so that they can really understand and appreciate the total compensation your organization offers. So often they look at their net pay, their take-home pay, and they just assume that that is what they make. But really, it's a lot more than that. And so we're going to talk for the next 40 minutes or so about not only what is a total compensation statement, but really how you can put it together easily yourself and some of the things you want to think about when you're putting that statement together. So let's talk about, I'm sorry, some of the copy it looks like is, but you'll see on your slides, on the handout, it looks fine. What is the total compensation statement? So it includes all the cash income plus the value of a lot of benefits that you're offering. And I'm going to walk you through what some of those benefits are. Sometimes you hear it referred to as a hidden paycheck, but I really like to refer to it or think of it as a positive communication tool. And what I mean by a positive communication tool is something that really, in fact, generates some value add for you as the organization. And finally, I often use total compensation statements to provide up-to-date information for employees on their current comp and benefits. And we'll talk about all that in the next few minutes. So let's take a quick poll. We have a small enough group here that I can ask you, what do you think is approximately the average percent of benefits in your employees' total pay? And I am going to put a poll out here and ask you to vote. Do you think the additional compensation to employees, in addition to their pay, is 10% overpay, 25%, 30%, or 40%? What would you say? And let's just give this a minute for people to vote, and then I will go through and show us the answer. We don't have a lot of people participating, so if you've got I'm assuming you can do this. Some of you may be listening to it on a TV. There we go, a couple more votes coming in. So we're going to leave it open about 14 more seconds, and then we will go back and at least show people what they think. But we've got a good difference going on here, lots of different ideas that people have. So if you've got a thought, throw it in. Great. Now I see a lot coming in. So I'm going to leave it open for just another second or two. And essentially, we've got a few more. Great. Let's let everybody get in that wants to. And we do have the majority coming up with the right answer, which is terrific. Okay, I'm going to stop the voting, and hopefully you all saw that the correct answer is 30%. On average, what the literature tells us is that for most of your employees, the total cost of having them engage with your organization is 30% over their base pay. And that is why this is so important as we go forward. So the vast majority of people on the call did come up with the 30%, so that's great. So the question for your leadership team, is this really our strategy for delivering total compensation? Do we just provide all these benefits, probably document them in the employee handbook, and hope that our employees realize that we are really spending an additional 30% for what it's costing us to keep them employed? I will tell those of you that are also in a position in your organization where you're looking to get a little bit more involved in the strategic part of the organization, this is also why I am passionate about HR people taking their seat at the table. And I talk about taking a seat at the table, not getting a seat. You must these days actually stand up and take that seat, because you are really driving what's happening in the organization. So let's jump forward to what you're going to do to create these total comp statements, because that's really what this webinar is all about. And again, I apologize for these slides being off the lineup, but that's okay. The first that we always start with in HR processes to assess what the goal of putting these together are, because you can make total comp statements as simple or complex as you really want them to be. Sorry, somebody's having trouble loading. I can tell you to call, maybe Bright Talk has a support that can help you. And then really evaluate the components of what you want to put in it. Evaluating the components and the assembly of the data is what we're going to now spend the most amount of time on, because it's really what's most complex. And then after you go through the whole process and get feedback and evaluation of how this went this year, it's really important. It can be really helpful for you to go back and fix up that data, get new data that you want for next year right away so that you're ready to go. So let's make sure we are really thinking about what makes up compensation in your organization. And I always start first with the employee handbook. I was just doing a compensation statement for a client the other day, and we were going through all sorts of what we wanted to include. And then by reading their employee handbook, they were an engineering firm, and I was able to see that they also pay for the annual state license for each one of their engineers. That's an expense that should be included on your total compensation statement. So here's just some ideas that are sort of the basics, if you will, and I really encourage you to think about going through your employee handbook page by page so that you pick up absolutely everything and that you're not forgetting about those government mandated benefits. A lot of people forget about something like unemployment compensation, for example. They forget about workers' comp because often it's something that HR isn't privy to. And there are easy ways to calculate these numbers that I will go through in a few minutes, but you want to make sure you are including all the pieces. And then remember some of the state mandated benefits, especially, for example, California, goodness knows, has tons. And New York has some mandated benefits around life insurance and disability. So you want to make sure that you're remembering anything particular to your state, especially for those of you that may have employees in multiple states. it's critical that you remember what you have to do for that state in particular. So, benefits, these are just benefits that are typically offered to employees. So, you may just want to use this as a bit of a checklist. But remember about disability insurance. You may have a health insurance plan that automatically comes with life insurance. You want to make sure to spell that out. Under retirement benefits, I actually do something kind of interesting. Not only do I put a line for the company match, which most of you on the call would probably think about, but there's a high expense to the organization to maintain a 401k or 403b or whatever you happen to have that annual audit done, for example. So I take the fee for the annual audit, I add the internal time of either your HR or CFO or whoever has to assemble that data and provide it, and come up with a total cost of really maintaining that benefit plan. And then I divide it evenly by all employees of the organization, even those who do not participate. Because my logic is we're offering this to you as a benefit. If you've chosen not to participate in it for some reason or another, that's your choice, but we are still going through a very high expense to be able to provide that to you. So just another little idea. You really want to make sure that these total comp statements truly incorporate every single expense you have to make it really meaningful to your employees. Then go ahead and think about the non-monetary benefits. Think about something like your holiday party, your company picnic. Do you bring in a monthly birthday cake for everybody who has a birthday? Oh, sorry, here's where the 401k administration fees is all about. Do you offer a lunch and learn program? All these things can be grouped into employee appreciation activities, for example, because if you have a company picnic and you spend $10,000 and you have 1,000 employees, you don't necessarily want to put a line item with just $10. But if you do a number of these things, it can add up to $45, $80 a person. Whatever that number is, I think it's important to consider every single thing that flows through your organization that can really be meaningful. I am going to watch the questions as we go. I will tell you a lot. Sometimes people have trouble with the sound. It's often your internet connection or your, your speakers or something. It's hard for me to manage that while I'm talking. And then, so really think about what percentage of employees is this really meaningful to you? Do you think that your employees would appreciate the value of what you give them after they've received a total compensation statement? And the data that we see out there says yes. In fact, 90% of employees, their appreciation for total comp goes up after receiving a total compensation statement. They have no idea. My daughter, who's 26, just took a new job. She's been working, though, for 3.5 years. And she called me when she got her first new paycheck, and she said, what is FUTA? F-U-T-A, because it was the first time she's looked at a paycheck in quite some time. And so understand that most employees are not even looking at their paychecks. So when you give them a nicely printed and nicely documented total compensation statement, all of a sudden they will see how very, very much you are doing. So think about your total comp statement really as a communication vehicle, more than just the section that you're going to have that really shows the dollars and cents. Use it as a way to communicate with employees about all different things going on in the organization. you want to make sure that it's branded to really look nice from your company. Many people have the ability, and we'll talk about this a little bit further down, to run total comp statements from their payroll providers. But often those are very, very generic looking. And while the data can be terrific, I think it's a huge missed opportunity to have those few moments in front of your employee's eye to really communicate what you may want to be sharing. And we're going to talk in a minute about different kinds of formats, whether you want to print these, whether you want to do PDFs, there are all sorts of options. So as we talk about messaging, I always include a message from leadership. I would start with a message from your CEO, maybe your CHRO if you have one, whoever leadership employees look to for vision and guidance. Have a message for them and have them state, and I typically write it for them, don't wait around for them to come up with it. But my message from leadership generally says, we want you to know that we are spending X% of our budget on your service to our organization. And in thanks for providing that, we would like to demonstrate to you how we arrive at your total compensation, something like that. You may have a sentence or two in there about the vision of the organization, maybe any big new changes, that kind of thing. And then I use some of my space to answer frequently asked questions, possibly. Highlight programs that people tend to forget about. Maybe you offer an EAP, for example, and the statistics tell us that typically when an EAP is offered, only 3 to 4% of your employee population is actually using the service. So if that's the case in your organization, what a great time to talk about the total comp statement, the EAP. The other thing, you see the tab here I have that says current benefit enrollment. I often like to do these just after the first of the year so that you've got a full calendar year worth of data. And if that is the same timing of open enrollment, I have often used the total comp statement as a way to highlight the benefit election people made at open enrollment. It's a great way to confirm that the data you have in your system in fact matches what the employee intended to select. So as we talk about branding, I think it's important that we bring corporate branding into every part of the human resource equation these days. So you want to use your company logo. You want the right color schemes. Talk to your marketing department about the fonts. Maybe incorporate particular graphic elements that go along with other marketing pieces that employees see you using. This is also a great way. I'm passionate about talking to HR people about building bridges throughout the organization. This is a great way to sit down with your marketing department and have them really be involved with you on how to design this particular document. So let's move into data assembly, because really this is the most critical step of putting a total comp statement together. When you go to look at all these data points, you will find without fail that they are coming from lots of different databases. So you have to make the decision of what is going to be the easiest way to pull this information into your form. Sometimes we have very good skills at Excel, and we can combine multiple Excel workbooks as long as there is a common field, either an employee number, a social security number. I caution you not to use last name, because often we have employees with the same last name in our organization. The electronic way, although it can seem more cumbersome, especially if you have a small organization, the real advantage is that you don't have human error involved. So manual entry for many organizations is certainly an option, but it always makes me nervous that somebody's going to just type in the wrong number. And so just a thought. Think about whether you can pull this data from your current payroll or HRIS system. For those of you on the call that may not be familiar with that acronym, it stands for Human Resource Information System. And hopefully everybody has some electronic method of pulling at least the basic information for their employees. You're likely going to have to be interacting with other departments in your organization to get this data, whether it's IT, accounting, there may even be some things in operations, and then really think about what you can create for formulas for yourself. So for instance, over the years, when I've done total comp statements, I have found that the payroll system is not collecting unemployment information on a per employee basis. So I have to go in, look at somebody's total compensation, and then figure out what unemployment might have been based on the rate in that state. So just think about those kinds of formulas. As we talk about your payroll or HRI system, this is the kind of thing you're going to want to pull out. Certainly the compensation data, you're going to, with their base salary, you're going to want to separate out overtime, bonuses, commissions, those kinds of things. You need the enrollment information and various benefit plans. And what I often do is that what you're able to export easily would be the deduction that you take from pay. You can then, that's what you export to an Excel spreadsheet, then I can sort that sheet or really do a find and replace. Everybody that's $35, for example, I then know that they are a single HMO. So that's how I transfer the information that's sitting in payroll, flip it around to be their enrollment information. And then make sure that you can export to some sort of a standard report so that ultimately you can combine all these data points in one easy way. So what kind of data collection are you going to need throughout the organization? We've talked a little bit about, hourly versus salary. Pay period contributions is the example I just gave about health insurance, and then change of rates mid-year. Now here is a decision point you have to make. Let's say an employee goes from single health insurance to married with family health insurance in July. You have to make a decision of just how specific you want these statements to be. If you want them to be absolutely pristine, then you calculate those numbers based on actual. But I will tell you that employees are going to take a quick glance at this, and they are going to get the idea that their salary is made up of about 30% more. So you certainly have the option, and I have the conversation with clients all the time. Do we want to just say these statements are based on your salary and benefit elections as of December 31st and just move forward with whatever they have in December? I was just talking to a client yesterday about part-time people who start mid-year. And they said, well, just don't send them a statement. And I didn't really like that idea because everybody else is getting something. It becomes really something your employees want to receive, hopefully. So we're going to show their actual and then annualize it as if they had worked there for 12 months. And we're just going to have one simple statement at the bottom. So understand that there are no rules around this. It can be whatever communication piece you want it to be. Think about how to handle paid time off. And I'm sorry, this slide's awful. One of the things you have to remember is that if you're using gross wages, then for many of your employees, their paid time off is already in that number. Certainly it would be in that number, for example, for your salaried employees. So what sometimes I do one of two things with paid time off. Either I subtract it, I calculate how many paid days off they had and what their salary rate is, and then I take it out of their gross pay and then add a separate line as paid time off, so it comes back in that way. Or I've had many statements I've created where I have a separate section in the benefit statement for paid time off, and I simply make a statement that says you were entitled to X number of days off this year, therefore we paid you this many dollars for work you never performed. And obviously I say it a little more succinctly and professionally than that. But so you have one or two, either of those ways works really well with the paid time off situation. So let's look at some of the tools you have available to you. When I do these, I typically just do a spreadsheet, and then I use Microsoft Word, and I do a mail merge, and it's kind of that easy. Now, the hardest part of the mail merge is getting your columns to line up properly when you start to import the data, but 90% of your communication piece is going to be standard for every single employee. So all you're importing are those numerical numbers off your compensation information. So if you are a smaller organization, I don't necessarily recommend that if you have thousands of employees, but if you're a smaller organization, it is a really easy way to just get the job done. And that's primarily how I've always done it. Your HRIS software, many of them these days, do have the ability to create total comp statements for you. My fear, and I've had talks with many payroll companies about it, if you really want this to be effective though, you need the ability to customize that statement for things that go beyond the payroll. For instance, the company picnic, or the example of my client who pays for the engineering certification. So make sure to ask your payroll vendor if they say, oh, we can do those for you, are you able to add individual line items? And then some of you may have internal software, and then you would just want to talk to your software provider to see if it's something that they can do. The other thing I like to encourage everybody is to think about contacting your benefit broker. Many benefit brokers will provide these as if asked as part of their fee. And those that may not do it for you at no cost have different tools and resources that they might be able to do for you very inexpensively. Actually, we didn't start this webinar with much history of me, but that's okay. Many people already know me. I used to be a part of Gallagher Benefit Services. They actually bought my consulting practice, and they offered them for a number of their clients. It was something that they would negotiate. So think about your benefit broker as somebody who may be able to partner with you in this process. Let's talk a bit about data manipulation because it is important that you understand both the advantages and limitations of the system you are using. You often will need to combine columns to do calculations, something like the paid time off example, something like the example I gave earlier about unemployment. These are all calculations that I'm doing on the back end, and which is why I'm really partial to just using Excel, because we all have great Excel skills, or many of us, or we can find someone in our organization who does. So just make sure that you know if you're counting on being able to manipulate data, that you really and truly are going to be able to do that in the system that you're using. So let's talk for a minute about how you're actually going to produce these. First of all, everybody loves total comp statements with pie charts and bar graphs and those sorts of things on them because they are visually very, very interesting. Understand that doing that in Excel is very difficult. So I am just black and white. If I'm going to do the total comp statement, there will not have charts and graphs on it. It's not worth the effort. I've done it over the years. You may be able to find someone who's really, really expert at Excel. Maybe you have somebody on your team. Maybe you have somebody who can do that programming for you. If that is really important to your organization, there are terrific software programs easily available. Just Google total compensation software that really can be affordable depending on the size of your organization. For the software, you still need all the things to think about we've been talking about on this webinar. They're not, they just print the statement. So, you know, the data that you give them is what they do. But maybe something to consider. Think about whether you're going to actually print a hard copy, and then if you're going to do that or mail those to people's homes. I always, if you print a hard copy, I like to mail them to employees' homes for two reasons. First is because I think it helps the privacy. When we give them out in the office, people leave them laying all over the place. I can't, I'm sure you can imagine that. So I see it as just an issue that I don't want to hear from employees that saw Susie's total comp statement and why does she make so much more than I make. The other advantage to mailing them home is that I really believe you get a lot of value by the employees' families seeing these and realizing so often we hear that people are encouraged to look for new positions because their spouse encouraged them to do so. So I think it's a really effective communication tool to the entire family. Certainly these days, printing in color is not as big a deal as it used to be. Most of us in our offices have color printers, and we can go ahead and do that. And they do look much nicer. And then really think about these days electronic distribution. Do you want to just make PDFs? I think that can be an excellent cost-effective solution, especially if you have a way to upload each person's statement into their employee self-service portal through your payroll program. And many of you may have that ability to add files to each employee and then just have them go out there and look for it. So just a lot of different things to think about. I talked a lot about the charts and graphs already. They are quick and easy. This is kind of the idea. It would show, you know, regular pay in red, benefits in the light blue, taxes in the dark blue, and maybe other in the yellow. But they can be difficult if you're just using Word and Excel. If you're going to mail them home, I've got a couple of tips that have worked for me over the years. First of all, make sure that you have your company's branding on the envelope. If you send them home in a very nondescript envelope, these days people are used to throwing away so much of their mail that they may end up in the garbage. I like to recommend that people mail them toward the end of the week, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday. And that is so that they will arrive home on Friday or Saturday. And by the time they get back to work on Monday, hopefully not everybody is talking about them. Also, things I've learned over the years is to use a window envelope and then print the employee's home address in the right place, right on the statement. That way, you don't have to worry about matching statements with envelopes. You just drop it in and it goes to the right place. That was probably, over the years, the hardest thing my team always had to do, is get them stuffed into the right envelope. So learn from our mistakes. We've talked a little bit about the print and distribution already. You know, any of these three methods are absolutely fine, whatever's going to work for you and your team. You know, where you can, make it color, and the PDFs, obviously, you can make in color. So, you know, I would really encourage you to think about that. So as we begin to get to the end of this, you know, some of the things you want to remember is the importance of maintaining confidentiality with these statements. And that's why I always caution organizations in passing them out in person. Make sure that you've always got a phone number where an employee can call if they have questions. If you do these at the beginning of the year and they come out close to the W-2s, I can promise you there will be questions because they will not match. We have so many these days pre-tax deductions that they won't match. So make sure that you have that. And then if you're going to spell out your benefits, please remember to have a disclaimer that says your benefit literature always covers, always, you know, trumps what this is, that in fact, anything they see here is quote unquote marketing or information only. So in conclusion, oops, looks like I got to click again. You really want to make sure that your total compensation statements are an overall communication tool, and they're not just about that one little snippet of pay, but they're really used to inform your employees about everything you're doing for them that really will add value. I am offering everybody on this webinar a special through August 31st. I teach, for some of you that are considering HR certification, either through HRCI or SHRM. I have an online program that's good for both test prep exams or test exams. So just email me and I'll be happy to give you a $25 discount on that program for participating today. And anyone who is already certified, do just give me, shoot me an email and I will send you the certificate for participating in today's program. And here's all sorts of other ways we can stay in touch. I will also send everybody as a thank you a complimentary HR assessment, which will help you not only make sure that your HR function is running as it should be, but give you lots of ideas that you can include on total comp statements in the future. So with that, I say thank you. I see lots of you have downloaded the slides, which is terrific. I am available to stay on and take questions. If anybody has any, feel free to type them into the question box. Otherwise, that ends our formal program for today, and I appreciate your joining me.